Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
This is KRWG Public Media, TV, radio, online. News that matters. Now, across the Mesilla Valley and the borderland, the stories that shape our community. From the KRWG Broadcast Center at New Mexico State University, this is Newsmakers.
Thank you for joining us for Newsmakers. I'm Casey Counts. New Mexico's film industry has grown in recent years, due in large part to tax incentives the state offers. Last year, the New Mexico Film Office, Film New Mexico, reported over $855 million was spent in the state compared to just over $625 million in 2021. We'll hear from New Mexico State Senator Jeff Steinborn, and who is the co-founder and board president of Film Las Cruces, and from Amorette Jones, the new director of Film Las Cruces, about the industry and how the ongoing SAG-AFTRA strike is impacting it locally. Senator Steinborn, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Good to be with you, Casey.
Let's start with a little bit of background about Film Las Cruces and your desire to co-found the organization.
So, for years, local people who have had exposure to the film industry, local actors, people who had maybe worked in Los Angeles, would constantly tell me in office and others, you guys really need to do more to grow the film industry here, and we need film studios and infrastructure. And I understood that as a goal, but we really didn't have much active industry here to speak of. Well, then in 2013, literally 10 years ago, almost to the month, I was in legislative session on a member of the House Tax Committee, and I heard the legislation to strengthen New Mexico's tax incentive. And I saw for the first time, actors and studio executives and people who were doing really well, lots of local businesses that were benefiting from it, and just how impressive that industry was, which really we weren't used to seeing here in Las Cruces. So it was like a big light bulb went off for me that, I get it. And I also knew that, being really proud of being from Las Cruces and our beautiful mountains and our quality of life here, I felt like we had everything here to be successful. And we just needed to put the pieces together. So when I came home from that legislative session, I called everyone who had called me through the years and other leaders in the community. And I said, let's put our heads together and try to model the success that they've had up north and create that down south. And that's what started what became Film Las Cruces 10 years
Let's
ago.
talk about how it's grown over 10 years' time. From then to now, what has changed?
Well, we've methodically put the pieces in place to help us be successful here. So, number one, I think we've built a great marketing apparatus to showcase us. We've created a cool film office, a great website with almost 1,000 locations. Really important is we changed the law twice to, was able to create a rural film incentive or an uplift film incentive to help give film productions a little extra incentive for filming outside of Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Because so much infrastructure and crew built up in those areas around the industry, film productions, it costs them to bring those resources outside. So we needed to level the playing field to help incentivize them to film outside of those areas. And so we did that. We created an extra 5% film incentive. And then this last session, we doubled it to an extra 10%, which went into effect July 1st. And so that makes it really sweetens the pie for them to film here, and that's been super helpful too.
Senator Steinborn, how would you say that has impacted the community at large?
Well, film is spreads money all over the place, and it's incredible, and it employs lots of people. And so, number one, it's given hopes and dreams to people who grow up in this town who want to work in the film industry, an opportunity that they can actually work in this town, like many of your students here at the university. So it's great. Number two, it's spreading business investment all over the community, from hotels to landscaping companies. I mean, film sets and film production spend money on lots of different things. So it's really been a great economic infusion all over town, a multi-million-dollar infusion, and that'll just grow.
Well, let's talk about the strike. The SAG-AFTRA strike
Sure.
continues as we're having this conversation. How has that impacted operations locally?
Well, there's different classes of film productions, and it's certainly having a slowdown on the film industry everywhere where there is a film industry. We had a film that was going to happen here that went on hold pending the strike. So it's already had an impact here. Having said that, there's some scale of union films which are still good-sized films, but not mega union scale films that aren't necessarily working with the unions that are striking because they don't employ crew on that level. And so there are still independent films that are being made, and some of them are being made here in Las Cruces. So fortunately, we have, it's not impacting us as much as it's impacting some areas that only have those bigger budget films. Las Cruces is kind of a hub for independent films, and so thankfully we still have a lot of activity here. We have things in production, and lots of discussions happening for the future. So,
were there any lasting impacts from the pandemic? Obviously, those numbers, you could see a big dip in 2020, and those numbers from the film office for New Mexico. How did recovery happen?
I think there was a lot of pent-up demand in the film industry and streaming content and studios that needed projects to be made. So actually, when we came out of the pandemic, a lot of projects started being made, and it was good for all of us. So I think, if anything, we're in kind of a rebound mode as an industry. Up until the strike, a lot of content was being made. So I think certainly the film industry is still very safety conscious, and there's still testing being done on a lot of film sets for COVID because it's still a highly infectious thing that can really shut down a film production, which is a high cost enterprise that moves very quickly. So they can't afford to have that happen. So, but having said that, it's back to business in the film industry, short of the strike, of course.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up safety, because I wanted to touch on that as well in the wake of the shooting on the set of Rust in northern New Mexico. How do you think things have changed or will change in New Mexico in terms of set safety?
It's really interesting. When that happened, the very next film made in New Mexico was in Las Cruces. The very next week, with Bruce Willis here in Las Cruces, where they were set to use guns. So it was really interesting because we found ourselves as a town like, okay, how do we operate and raise our game in this new world where this happened? And I think largely, the film industry has had protocols. They have had protocols for dealing with fake weapons and, blanks and this kind of thing. And those protocols might have been broken on that show up north where that happened. But nonetheless, overnight what happened was they stopped using blanks. They went to fake guns, and they were largely digitally creating the muzzle blasts and things that they otherwise would be using a real gun, although firing a blank. And we saw that happen literally within a week in Las Cruces. Those next movies that were made here switched almost overnight from using a fake gun with blanks or a real gun with blanks to fake guns. So, and then, Mel Gibson filmed here right after that, same kind of deal. So it's interesting. And we as a film office, we're very attentive to making sure that it was completely safe set situation. We met with the armorers and the prop masters and local police and fire. And so we were already safety conscious, but it took us to the next level, and I think the industry's become safer too.
It was just almost immediately after the filming on the Bruce Willis movie wrapped that we learned the news of his diagnosis of dementia, and it seems like a particularly cruel version of the disease, frontotemporal dementia. Just, want to say our best to him and his family and his caretakers as they navigate that very sad situation. Let's move on now to some of the opportunities for students in our community, and maybe how the Creative Media Institute can help feed the film industry locally.
Sure. So, films, first of all, there is a great website. Everybody interested in the film industry should follow Film Las Cruces. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Instagram. We put out casting calls, crew calls, training opportunities for people who've never worked a day in their life on a set, which can include a student too. So follow that. That's a really important start if you want to access the film industry in any capacity. But film productions utilize a lot of beginners to support the film production, known as production assistants. And so you just kind of have to hustle. The film industry is a job that you need to get out of your comfort zone, go meet the people involved, go to the Film Las Cruces office, introduce yourself, tell them you want to work in it, follow those job postings. and just try to get your opportunity to work on a film set, and don't be afraid, no matter what your background is, to start at that bottom production assistant level. Work hard, and and eventually you will get your opportunity and you can move up very quickly.
It must be very difficult, especially in the beginning, because the work might not necessarily be consistent, especially at a time like now. What's your best advice? You gave some good advice there to get out there and meet people and work hard. What other tips could you offer?
Yeah, hang on to stable income. Understand that it's a kind of a seasonal business. It's a little bit feast or famine, and Las Cruces is in a phase where, but there's some people, in robust film areas that are just constantly working. But, full-time in the film industry is, I think, 32 weeks a year. Because when you're working on a film set, you're working longer hours, so you're making more money during a shorter amount of time. So it's just position yourself for the long haul, have some stable income, work on your craft, and you're in a great place. In Las Cruces, we are poised to just keep growing and getting bigger and better. And so whatever your dream is, just get trained and be willing to go out of your comfort zone to get those opportunities, and then work really hard.
Well, let's talk about one of the big areas where Las Cruces saw some growth recently, and that was with the relocation of 828 Productions to town. Tell us, what's the status of that move? Yeah,
so 828 is, they've got a lot going on, and they have a lot of irons in the fire, and they're working on more than just film production. They're working on, accounting and post-production, which happens after photography and filming has ended. You go into a phase of making a film called post-production, where you're in a studio environment, mixing the sound and special effects and stuff like that. Not a lot of post-production happens in New Mexico, and 828 is really working on a whole ecosystem of film and support services, which are great for us. They've, in addition to their big studio property where they want to build sound stages, they're going to be creating some of these other office opportunities and post-production, and so they're all in the works right now, I can say, and they're also working on producing a handful of film projects. So they're busy.
Well, with the minute or so that we have left, I'd like to get back to some numbers we had at the beginning of the program.
Sure.
And that was from Film New Mexico, and that was $855 million and change spent in the state in 2022.
Right.
And you have some new numbers to share with us.
Yeah, they just released, I want to say 2 weeks ago, some new numbers that were just shy of 800 million, so similar to the year before. And we're seeing that there's still impressive spending around the rest of the state, but not where we want to end up. So I think we still have work to do, and the state has work to do to help encourage more film production, especially from some of these big studios like Netflix around the whole state. But we're working hard, and I think that my message is the future is bright.
All right. Well, we're going to speak to the new director of Film Las Cruces next.
Great.
Senator Jeff Steinborn, thank you so much for sharing your insight into this exciting field with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we're pleased to have Amorette Jones join us. Welcome to Las Cruces, and welcome to KRWG Public Media.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about your background when you're talking to people about what you did before you got here. What's at the top of your list?
Well, I've been in media and entertainment over 3 decades, and I've, spanned from the big studios to independent to the music business to the blockchain and tech business and to the brand business. And I'd say my highlights really vary. I love independent film, and I have a rich history in independent film. I love the art of discovery and discovering new talent and new places and adventures and things like that. And so I'd have to say my time working in independent film, which I spent about a decade of my career doing, and at Artists and Entertainment, as well as with some other companies. So that's I would say the highlight until now I'm here. This is my new highlight.
Well, what was attractive about the opportunity at Film Las Cruces for you?
I think, as I mentioned, one of the reasons I love independent film is, as I said, the art of discovery. And I feel like Las Cruces is such a great place. It has all of the ingredients, including community support and diverse locations and a rich history, that I feel like, we can really grow the city so that it's a true boom town in southern New Mexico for film and media. So it was very attractive to me to come to the area and explore what I can do to bring folks in to shoot more film and to grow the film business here.
Had you spent any time in this region before?
Zero. Zero. I'd spent time in Santa Fe and spent quite a bit of time in Taos. I was born and raised in southern Texas, a little place called Harlingen, which is also considered a border town. So I left Texas about 30 years ago, and I still had not gone through Las Cruces. I went in for one of my interviews there and really fell in love with the place. I fell in love with just the incredible culture, the history. I've done a ton of reading about it and have learned about the pioneer women and had learned about some early films that were shot in and around. And so I'm super intrigued and curious to learn more. I'm actually relocating. I'll be physically in Las Cruces. Well, I'm doing a hybrid thing right now, but I'll be physically full-time in Las Cruces on October 1st. So I'm spending some time. I found a place. I've signed the documents and all of that. So I'm well on my way.
Well, hopefully you're somewhere in the meantime where you're able to escape this terrible heat.
Well, ironically, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the moment for the next 2 weeks, and I was looking at my weather app, and in fact, it's hotter here than it is in Las Cruces. But I'll be back in New Mexico, and I'm actually sharing my time between Taos and Las Cruces. I had a plan to spend about 5 months over the summer in Taos. And this job popped up, and gratefully I was selected. And so now I'm shaving some of the time off in Taos and going into Las Cruces.
You mentioned the great opportunities that Las Cruces has to grow in the business. Can you define that a little bit more for us? Where do you think those opportunities are exactly?
So, to me, I think there's a great, and I go back to the world of independence again, just for a few reasons. One, as we all know, issues with the strike and things of that nature. And so independent productions are getting waivers and such so they can move forward with production. And I think that, that's a really good opportunity for us. I also feel like, commercials are another great place to go. I think, the goal is to put people to work, to increase the ecosystem of such, bringing more projects in so that people have projects to work on and that we can keep folks in place in Las Cruces and build our base, much like Albuquerque and Santa Fe have built their base. And I think between the new creative center that's being led by Ross Marks, by the great work that's already been done by my predecessors and certainly Jeff, who's secured the new incentive, all of the ingredients are there. I think, making people aware of again, these unique and diverse locations, of the incentives, of our great crew base, of the talented folks, and, the community. What I've experienced in my short time in Las Cruces is that there's a real openness and a desire to bring film in and to support film. And those are really welcome ingredients for a filmmaker trying to get a project done.
Well, maybe you could explain your perspective a little bit and kind of define for folks who may not know what the role of the director at Film Las Cruces is. Basically, a little job description for us, if you will.
Sure. Well, today's description, it does, I joke about that, but it does, of course, it's pretty dynamic, as the film business and media business is quite dynamic. But, I'm essentially an employee of the city, county, and states. And so I work for the people. And so my role is, and I serve a number of different constituents, so to speak. So, my work for the Economic Development Group is to bring more business into Las Cruces, to create more jobs in film, to create additional business for those businesses that support film. So I'm on the ground making those relationships and also making introductions and building awareness to those folks who will bring production here. That's a big part of the job. Another piece of it is really the effort of branding Las Cruces and getting a strong brand out there so people know who we are. People understand that we're a great spot for filmmaking, that they'll be treated very well here, and that they'll save a bunch of money as they create their productions. And then, of course, I'm constantly in communication with the film community. I spent 30 years in the business, so I have a good network of folks, from the big studios to indie studios to commercial directors, independent producers, and various industries that support film. So it's introducing my network and expanding that network to what we have to offer here in Las Cruces.
Do you have at this point some kind of benchmarks or hopes in terms of, what that growth could look like in numbers?
I've literally been on the job 3 solid weeks now. So we've got metrics that we have to reach that they're put in place, for the city and the county. It's my goal to surpass those metrics that have been put in place for us, and to do all of the work that's necessary to bring more film into Las Cruces. Part of this is also a collaboration with, our partners on the ground. So 828, of course, is a big piece of this puzzle. And then, of course, the other film offices. So between Santa Fe and Albuquerque, and of course, the state film office, ensuring that we're in lockstep with our initiatives and that we're also positioned in a way that we can get our piece of the pie, so to speak.
I was hoping to bring this up earlier, actually, but your work on the Blair Witch Project is something that I didn't want to let this few minutes get by without being able to chat with you about a little bit, because folks will remember that. I know people were just scared out of their minds. And so how exciting was it from your end to see that phenomenon develop into what it was?
It was a real roller coaster ride. I was part of the group that picked the movie up in Sundance in January of '99. We released the film mid-July of '99, so we had exactly 6 months to build a campaign. And so we hit the ground literally like a rifle shot. In terms of marketing budgets, I had about $200,000 to market the film, which is nothing. It's a lot, but it's not anything in terms of a marketing budget. So we were very, very busy and trying to, of course, build the mythology and keep the genie in the bottle so it wasn't exposed as being something not real. A little easier then, the blessing and the curse is that there was no social media then. There was no YouTube. There was no, anything. So we had to generate marketing without the use of social media. On the flip side, it also helped us keep the secret because we were able to, now of course, the power of social media, it's very difficult to keep things under wraps. In our case, we were able to do so.
You mentioned earlier the impacts of the SAG-AFTRA strike, which at the time of this conversation is ongoing. But one of the key sticking points seems to be artificial intelligence. So you mentioned social media, and now we've got this new front, artificial intelligence. And I wonder what you can tell us about what you think that might mean for the industry and the workers in the industry.
I think AI is here. There's no putting that away. I mean, there's no moving away from it. I think if, as an industry, it can be throttled and used as a tool instead of the tail wagging the dog, then I think it can be of great benefit. I think there's efficiencies that can be created through AI. one of those efficiencies is not duplicating people's faces and voices or eliminating writers from the process or anything like that. However, I do think it can be a powerful tool if initiated correctly and if there's some guardrails put around it in terms of protecting people and their livelihoods. But we know with technology, there's no going back, and it will change, and it will likely automate some positions. However, even in automating some positions, I think some new opportunities will open up for folks to move into other forms of work in support of the industry.
I mean, that's got to present a challenge even, for someone like you, whose job it is to bring jobs to the state. So how concerned are you that that those guardrails will be placed where they need to be?
I have to have faith in the negotiators and the process that people will be protected. There's the human quality and the cultural impact of media. And again, that humanity is a critical piece. I just can't see a future where human beings will no longer be in the process of developing media and story ideas and film and things like that. I think that there's some jobs that certainly can be automated. And we've seen that through technology now. When I started in the business, we were still cutting trailers on film. I mean, we still had splicers. Now I'm sounding really old. When I went to school, I went through 4 feet of snow. But the reality is there was no email. There was there was nothing like that when I started in the business. And of course, we grew and evolved. And more jobs were created in other fields, and systems changed and processes changed. However, the business kept evolving. And so I think we'll be in the same position.
Well, that's all our time now. Director of Film Las Cruces, Amorette Jones, thank you so much for being with us today. Is it too soon to ask red or green, our standard state question?
I go Christmas.
Good to have you on. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
And that's our time for now. Join us this week on KRWG Radio. Every weekday, it's Morning Edition from 5 a.m. to 9. Fresh Air at 11, followed by Here and Now from noon to 2. And All Things Considered, 4 to 7 p.m. KRWG News is always online at krwg.org. And we'd like to hear from you. Email us with story ideas and video submissions. The address is feedback@nmsu.edu. For all of us at KRWG News, I'm KC Counts. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Newsmakers.